Hello and welcome to another Cliff Reviews Art House. This time I'm reviewing the documentary Your Fat Friend, directed by Jeanie Finlay. This is a documentary about the writer and activist Aubrey Gordon, who's been a vocal figure on anti-fat attitudes and the experience of being a fat person. I really enjoyed this documentary. It's one of those life-affirming films that makes you want to be a bit less judgmental and a bit kinder to people out in the real world. I don't know any of Finlay's work before this, but I really like the way this documentary was made from a number of perspectives. I think that a film like this can easily be self-indulgent, can easily be too reliant on the subjective view of the subject that's been oppressed, risking encouraging exaggerated victimhood and kind of me against the world. Clearly, Aubrey has experienced a lot, but I think there's a delicate balance in this not tipping too much into one person's perception of the world being against them. For me, the film gets the balance perfect. Aubrey never portrays herself as a victim. It never felt self-indulgent. Yet Aubrey really authentically shares her experiences and how she started out as an anonymous blogger through to authoring a New York Times bestseller. Aubrey is really good in the roles she's found for herself. All her views are based on direct experience, so there's a real authenticity to what she does. What really won me over, however, was her fantastic personality. You really feel that this is a person you'd like to spend time with. The film was made over 6 years. Finlay started filming when Aubrey was completely unknown. In this regard, she struck gold in terms of the story arc that emerges and the message that the film ends up communicating. I often commend the documentaries of Laura Poitras because I think she builds up real trust with her subjects. When there's this kind of trust, I think that documentary becomes more reliable than if the filmmaker and subject are kind of making a film together. I think that Finlay has done this here. The film is shot through a very compassionate lens, and Finlay's presence as a filmmaker is clearly felt. We do hear her voice sometimes as she asks questions. We really get the feeling that the camera was switched on at just the right moments. It never feels like anything is artificially staged. This is particularly the case as we see Aubrey talking with her mum and dad. Her interactions with her parents provide some of the most moving moments of the film. The documentary is clearly providing her mum and dad, who are now separated, with an opportunity to reflect on how they parented Aubrey as she started putting on weight as a teenager. In a really kind and non-blaming way, the parents get to reflect on their regrets and the impacts of some of their attitudes and actions on weight and body image. I felt this was so authentic. At one point, the mum kind of has a moment where she's realizing the power of saying things out loud, and the fact that it's being recorded on camera. She says things bubble up. It's almost like this is proving to be like a therapy session for her, and that somehow the camera was providing a way of finding truth. Thinking about this, you couldn't really give higher praise for a documentary than serving a role like this. Again, I don't think that this authenticity and the power of healing that seems to be happening before our eyes could have happened in the absence of a super present, kind and compassionate filmmaker. Really interesting insights are given on the diet industry and healthcare, but just as important, the film portrays the broader issues of how fat people are perceived and treated, inviting a paradigm shift in society's attitudes towards fatness. I don't really have any criticism of the documentary. I felt quite emotional at the end and I was really engaged with the message. However, I was left wanting to know more about Aubrey. She alludes to mental health and anxiety issues at several points throughout the film. I wanted to know more about what was going on. Apart from the conversations with the parents and a few moments where Aubrey turns on the camera at a key moment when something is happening in real time, Aubrey is always kind of performing. It's not to say that it's not authentic, but she is a really good performer, which is why I guess she was able to create a successful podcast. I do think that to try and put more into the film along these lines would have compromised the nuanced message the documentary so successfully communicates. It's 95 minutes long and it's a perfect length. But I would say that there's only a skin-deep understanding of certain aspects of Aubrey's life. In addition to her mental health, we know very little about other things. For example, relationships and friends. As I say, this isn't a criticism. I think that first and foremost, this actually isn't a therapy session for Aubrey as it is for the parents. The film is a vehicle principally for Aubrey's activism. It's about getting the message out there. The other thing that was kind of skimped over was some of the evidence that she mentions about the diet industry and the failure rate of diets and the complex issue of health problems and obesity. However, as with her mental health, I think that this would be too much to bring into the film too. In the end, this isn't trying to be scientific or robust in the presentation of evidence on these matters. The key point here is that Aubrey's provoking us into realising how judgmental we can be and how, if we were just a bit kinder and more compassionate to fat people, the world would be a better place. It's a much simpler message than talking about the health consequences or the destructive nature of the diet and wellness industry. This is a really successful documentary that definitely made me think about how fat people are perceived in new ways. More than that, it's an enjoyable and entertaining story that, as I say, left me feeling uplifted at the end of it. I highly recommend it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.